Marley was dead to begin with, as dead as a doornail. Walking along a path at the roots of Pikes Peak, you contemplate just how a doornail could be considered the deadest of objects. Entering the Anselm Society Digital Pub, you meet a raucous conversation on the arts, faith, and whether Gonzo was the right Muppet to play Charles Dickens. In a corner table, by the fire, are three people. One of them is arguing that we should bring back the tradition of telling each other ghost stories each Christmas. And that person's me, your co-host, Matthew Mellema, and welcome to Believe to See, a podcast of the Anselm Society Arts Guild. The Anselm Society is a coalition of churches across the Front Range of Colorado dedicated to one very simple goal, a renaissance of the Christian imagination. So to further this goal, we do all sorts of things, COVID permitting. We have our big Imagination Redeemed conference, which attracts folks from across the country each spring. We have a regular slate of concerts, lectures, and other events designed to foster love and understanding of arts and faith. And we have our own Guild of Artists right here in Colorado Springs. When we aren't creating art, some of us like to podcast. So, Believe to See. To find out more about the Anselm Society, please visit us at anselmsociety.org. And why don't you rate and review our show on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We really, really, really appreciate your 5-star reviews. Really. But you know that already. Let's turn to the subject at hand, and I'll give a little background on this subject. About a month or so ago, talking with my mom says, "Hey, Matt, you know what you should do for an episode? You should all discuss the different Christmas Carol movie adaptations, and you can all discuss which one you like the best." So I do my polite, "Okay, that's a nice idea, Mom. All right," and just sort of change the subject then. But then as I start thinking about it, hey, that's actually a good idea, especially considering that my own household is sharply divided on the subject of what is the best Christmas Carol. So be nice to sort of get this all settled right now. So I thought I'd bring in two renowned Christmas Carol experts, Mandy and Evangeline. How are you both doing?
Good. Doing well.
Okay, good. So I will say I contacted you both about this show idea maybe a couple days ago, and I was pretty blown away by the preparation you both were doing. Mandy, it sounds like you kind of went on a Christmas Carol movie binge. Is that right?
I think we both did. Because I was thinking, oh, sure, I can think of 3 that I like. And then I thought, wait a minute, I can think of one that I don't like. And I can think of 2 that I like. But surely there are more out there. And boy, dang, are there. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, yes.
I was surprised. In searches, I kept turning up another version. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. I was doing the same thing. I don't know if anyone else watched the very first film adaptation of A Christmas Carol, which was filmed in 1901. It's silent, obviously, and lasts 4 minutes and 55 seconds. I will say, don't mean to brag, I watched the entire thing to prepare for this episode.
Dedication.
Well, dang, I wish I'd asked you because I saw that there were a couple silent versions, but I just assumed that they would be lost to history. Shoot. I'm going to have to watch them again.
Some of them were,
yeah.
But the very first one has not been lost to history. They even have kind of 1901 special effects to do the ghosts. It was actually kind of cool.
Oh.
Matt, it's just like you to do extra credit, Yes, true. I think I can be pretty confident in saying that you were the teacher's pet, right?
Oh, you were a front row kid, weren't you? Were you a front row kid?
Yes.
So that's actually a good question.
Basically, Matt is Hermione, right?
Yes.
Well, thank you. I take that as a really, really nice compliment. But I was the sort of kid who would always do all of my homework. Any extra credit, I'd be doing it. But I was not a front row sitter, and I was not a class participator. So I would do all that, but I'd try to sit in the back corner, and I really just didn't want the teacher to notice me. And that kept up consistently.
So you had kind of an emo, there was an emo version of Matt. Out there. I just want to picture Matt, wearing dark clothes.
Emo Hermione. Yeah, that's pretty much
hair
it.
in his eyes. I'm enjoying this way too much.
I was just trying to imagine the hair in the eyes.
Matt's
I'll let you know.
got
I had frosted tips in high school because it was fashionable back then.
I remember we
right.
discussed that once on
Yep.
another
Oh
podcast.
my gosh. You just lost all credibility in my eyes.
I know.
Okay,
Yeah.
pivoting
can't
conversation
respect you
topics
anymore.
quickly. So let's talk in general about A Christmas Carol itself, because first of all, it doesn't involve talking about me in high school, but also
Okay.
this is probably one of the works of literature that's had the most profound impact on, just our modern culture, whether we
Yeah.
realize it or not. So let's start with some little background for each of us. Mandy, what's your experience with A Christmas Carol? Like, what did you read it growing up? Did you watch specific movies? What was your deal with it?
I actually did not read it until I assigned it to students when I was a teacher. And the reason I assigned it is because I felt like my students needed to read Charles Dickens. But, okay, confession time. I am not a huge fan. But that is because I know I'm a huge fan of A Christmas Carol. But I mean, let's all admit, we know that his other novels were written, first of all, as serials, right? And he was paid by the word, and the man had 10 children, I think. So he did, right? Didn't he? Was he the one with 10? I think
like
Bach.
No,
was
that
the
sounds
one with
about right.
15.
Right ballpark, at least.
Bach had 15. I think it was Dickens that had 10. But anyway, I like the writing, but there was always so much of it. I know I don't sound like a very good Anselm person right now, but I think that A Christmas Carol is just brilliant. And I loved assigning it to my students, and they were always surprised by how much they liked it, mostly because they had been assigned great expectations by the teacher in the year before me. So they enjoyed A Christmas Carol better, much more than Great Expectations. But anyway, so that was basically my experience with it. I do remember the 1974, is that right, version, or 1970 version? The one with Albert Finney, which I know we will get to. I remember.
Whoa!
We'll discuss.
Sorry, sort of tipping my hand at that, but yes.
Yeah, and we'll discuss that later. But anyway, tipping my hand now. I remember seeing that on TV, but it didn't captivate me that much. But when Peter and I got married in 1992, we got married. Our anniversary was actually just a couple days ago, December 12th.
Happy anniversary!
Thank you. 28 years.
Woohoo!
And so when we went on our honeymoon, the Muppet Christmas Carol was in theaters. So we actually went to see the Muppet Christmas Carol on our honeymoon.
That's awesome.
That is so romantic.
I know. So I love me some Muppet Christmas Carol, which tipping my hand there too. That's basically my background. Probably not a very austere, impressive background, but there it is.
All right. Evangeline, how did you grow up with Christmas Carol?
Okay, I can't go into it too much until we have our discussion, but I did find the version and watch the version that was my introduction as a child. And so that brought back a lot of memories. I don't remember reading it, but I feel like it's one of those things that at some point I must have read, or it was read to me.
Yeah.
Or it just got into my head somehow through Christmas atmosphere. I don't know. So a couple years back for our Anselm Christmas party, we did a Dickens Christmas. Do you guys remember that?
I do. I remember what you wrote. It was wonderful.
Yeah. So I think it was Brian asked me, or somebody asked me, probably Brian, to write a monologue for our, actor friend who was playing Dickens. And so I actually listened to A Christmas Carol, and that's the first time that I remember taking it in, not in movie form or play form. I know I've seen it in a play. And I was really struck, I write fantasy, that's my area. So I was really struck with the supernatural aspect and just how powerfully Dickens uses it. So that's what I remember from my own coming to the story.
Okay, great. So my like you both, I need to keep my stuff how I grew up on it a little close to the vest, so we can save a little bit of drama for the listeners. But something you did mention, Evangeline, you're feeling that you had read it, even though you can't really remember it. I had this feeling a few years ago. I started a tradition where I listened to Christmas Carol like book on tape in like the days leading up to Christmas. So first time I did that was maybe 5 years ago, and doing that I was like, oh, never read this before, but I kind of have, because so much of the dialogue is just verbatim in all of the film adaptations.
Yes.
And I think that's a sign of how brilliant Dickens' dialogue was, because
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, this was written in like 1843, and all these years later, all the Hollywood scriptwriters like, yeah, that's good. We're not going to get better than that,
Right.
What reason have you to be merry? You're poor enough. What reason have you to be miserable?
Yes.
You're rich enough.
You're rich
There's
enough.
no such thing as poor enough, rich enough, only poor enough. I mean, it's perfect. It's perfect. You don't need to change it.
Yes.
And the line,
how do you, how do you improve on there's more of, are you going to say the same line?
You're going to say the same line. No, you go.
Let's say it together. There's more of gravy than grave about you.
Yes. Yeah, Corey and I were like taking bets on whether or not that was going to be included in the version that we were watching. So, and yeah, most of them it is. Yeah.
I mean, it's just perfect. And I will say just a couple notes on the book. I mean, it's a novella. Before we dive into the movies, that really stuck out to me. One is the kind of setup of it. I mentioned in the intro that I wish we would make it a tradition again to tell ghost stories at Christmas. And
yes,
it's not broadly known, but back in like the day when Charles Dickens wrote this, that was the tradition. You would tell each other ghost stories on Christmas. So this Christmas Carol is very much in that tradition. Like if you think that one, there'll be scary ghost stories and tales of the glories. Like that's what it's referring to.
Exactly.
So bring it back. Tell a ghost story to your kids this Christmas.
I agree.
Absolutely.
I know Evangeline does too.
Oh, yes.
Something else that I love, the narratorial voice for Dickens is just so good. I mean, again, these are lines that you know whether or not you've read the book. Marley was dead to begin with, like that. And then I just need to read this because I love it so much.
Go ahead. Go for it.
It's in the first couple pages, and it's Dickens' first real sketch of Scrooge as a character. Oh, but he was a tight-fisted hand to the grindstone, Scrooge. A squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner. Hard and sharp as flint, from which no steel had ever struck out generous fire. Secret and self-contained, and solitary as an oyster. The cold within him froze his old features, nipped his pointed nose, shriveled his cheek, stiffened his gait, made his eyes red, his thin lips blue, and spoke out shrewdly in his grating voice. A frosty rime was on his head, and on his eyebrows, and his wiry chin. He carried his own low temperature always about with him. He iced his office in the dog days, and didn't thaw it 1 degree at Christmas. There we go. Charles Dickens, ladies and gentlemen.
I love it.
Yes.
Yes.
So those are my 2 notes on the novella, because again, if you've seen one of the adaptations, let's we get to one of the weird ones, you know this, and you probably know a lot of lines from it. But another point I wanted to touch on before we get to our list of best adaptations is, I'm not exactly at a definitive source here. I'm looking at Wikipedia for adaptations, and my goodness, there are so many. Like just with like feature films, there's 1901, 1908, 1910, 1913, 1914, 1916, 1922, 1923, 1928, 1935, 1938, 1947, 1951. You get the idea. So basically, ever since we were able to make movies, we've been making movies about this. Mandy, why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, I think the resonance of the story. And I mean, I think, to borrow a term from Flannery O'Connor, which sounds weird when talking about Dickens, but I think it's Christ haunted. And I think it's, we all know the regrets from the past and the fear of the future. And we know what we are capable of. And perhaps we don't want to be capable. I mean, the evil that we're all capable of and that we wish we weren't. And, I don't know, I would venture to say, I think God gave him that story because I think it's just so true. Just so true that it's resonant. That's why. That's my guess.
Yeah. How about you, Evangeline? What's your guess?
I 100% agree with Mandy. It's a compelling story. I think that I should be able to read the meme that I shared with you guys.
Yes.
Okay. All
I
right.
approve.
All right. So I sent this to Matt and Mandy and said, as the most liberal of the co-hosts, I should probably be able to bring this up. So I just saw a meme has Marley and Scrooge, and it says, "A Christmas Carol is the heartwarming tale of how rich people must be supernaturally terrorized into sharing." Apparently, this has always been true.
Yeah.
So that touches on another point about A Christmas Carol. It's the politics of A Christmas Carol probably don't strike any of us as extraordinary today. Some of the points of, hey, you should care what happens to poor people. You shouldn't just ignore them. And, you have a duty to care about, your fellow human beings. That seems very commonplace today. When it was written, that was not a commonplace assertion. There was a very entrenched attitude by a lot of, especially the upper classes, that the poor pretty much have what's coming to them. It's destined. It's fated to be. Wave them away, and then just sort of go about your business. So Charles Dickens doing this was actually quite the political statement back in the day, and he's someone to admire, even though we don't catch how incendiary that is. It really was. And that's just another one of the virtues of A Christmas Carol.
Evangeline and I don't think we asked you this, but have you seen, I hate the title of this movie, but the movie The Man That Invented Christmas? Have you seen that,
Okay,
Matt?
I have not. And I'll give a little apology to the listeners. So forgive me in advance. I'm going to sound like a crank. I'm going to sound like Scrooge here.
Okay, go ahead.
I am not a big fan of the genre of films that are like, here's a movie about how the author went about writing something that you love. So, like the, what is it? Finding Neverland, that one about Mary Poppins.
Oh, I love
the
that.
one about J.R.R. Tolkien, where like the J.R.R. Tolkien, I didn't see it, but I noticed at one point he's like a young man and he's talking about how him and his friends are going to be very tight-knit, a fellowship. It's like, oh gosh, shut up. Stop doing this. Stop it.
I didn't see that
when
one.
I saw one about Charles Dickens, I did not see it because I don't like the genre. But maybe it's a good movie. Go ahead, Mandy. Now I've got my grumpy old man rant done.
Well, I do have to say, maybe we have different tastes because I do love Finding Neverland, but that's partly because I just love Johnny Depp and the young, what's his name? Anyway, Freddie Highmore? Yeah, who was no one then.
Yeah.
He was no one then. But anyway, I loved The Man Who Invented Christmas so much that as soon as I got home from seeing it in the theater, I pre-ordered the DVD and then I went to go see it again like 2 or 3 days later. It is beautifully done. And one of the best things about it, because I'm sure Charles Dickens is famous for having said that his characters crowded around him in his study. And they would fight over who he was going to write about next. And that is so hilariously portrayed and beautifully portrayed in the movie. Because all the characters, they actually have them come to life around him. And one of them is Scrooge. And Christopher Plummer plays Scrooge. And I will say, even though my favorite Scrooge is in what I will choose as my favorite adaptation, well, he was Christopher Plummer, I think, does a better job as Scrooge even than the one that I'm going to refer to in my favorite Christmas Carol. Christopher Plummer is such an amazing Scrooge. And it's really beautifully done. I think you would actually really like it. It doesn't feel like it's made for the readers to understand. It's an artist movie. Would you agree, Evangeline?
Yes.
Because you've seen it.
It definitely strikes at the writer's heart. So I would recommend it on that. I get what you're saying, Matt, and I think that you could give this one a try and it might be different.
Okay, I may give it a shot, but no guarantee I won't grumble through it. So just so you know, that risk is out there.
Yeah, tell Danielle we're sorry if that's the case.
Okay.
All right, so here's how I want to structure things. I think we should each go like one at a time, go through our top 3 adaptations. So then when one of us mentions it, we can just get the discussion for it done there. Then I want to do some specific awards. like best Scrooge, best Ghost of Christmas Present, all that stuff. And
Okay.
also, I'd like to talk about some of the worst adaptations because I think we'll all have some thoughts on those.
Yeah.
But let's start with you, Evangeline. What is your third favorite Christmas Carol adaptation?
Okay, I did not manage to watch all 25,000 of them. So this is just of the 5 that I watched over the weekend.
I think we can say watching 5 Christmas Carol movies in a weekend, that's some pretty good work you did.
Yeah.
You get podcaster extra credit.
I'm a little caroled out. A little bit. Okay, so from this weekend, coming in at number 3, and I don't love this one. I don't. Is the 1984 George C. Scott version.
Oh, okay.
Don't love it though.
Okay, so I'll tell you my what I think of this one. I did not grow up with this version, but I know a lot of people have. One of those people who I tried to talk into coming on the podcast and saying her piece is Danielle, my wife. So this is her favorite one, bar none, and that's the one she thinks of as the best. I have seen it once. I thought it was fine. It's okay. Not on my list, but it's fine. So, Evangeline, what do you think the benefits of the George C. Scott version are?
I'm struggling now to remember. It's like fading.
They're all blurring into one.
They're all blurring. I don't really remember anything super specific about it right now. Sorry.
All right, Mandy, do you have any familiarity with it? Yeah, go for it.
Well, here's the thing, and Danielle can be irritated with me. I will accept that. I did not get past the Ghost of Christmas Past when I tried to watch the George C. Scott one.
Interesting.
Because here's my thing. I started watching it. The first thing I noticed that I thought was positive was that George C. Scott was not he wasn't a caricature. And he wasn't overly dramatic and goofy, I guess. And his bah humbug came across really naturally. But after a while, I realized I started to see that as a weakness because my mind was kind of wandering and he wasn't very compelling. Right. And I'm not saying he should have been a caricature, but I feel like, and I actually told you guys ahead of time because you're the youngins that you needed to Google the movie Wall Street and Gordon Gekko. Because after a few minutes, I was just like, that's okay. This is just Gordon Gekko grown up. So let me because I know there are youngster listeners as well. But, so Wall Street, and I think it's appropriate. Oh, I meant to check what year Wall Street was made. I would guess it was probably made in 83 or 84. It was about greed, obviously, and Wall Street. And Michael Douglas played this character named Gordon Gekko, who is just, a white collar criminal, basically. And his famous line was, "Greed is good." That was his famous line. And so after a while, I was like, this is just Gordon Gekko. He didn't feel compelling to me. He just seemed like your average run of the mill greedy businessman. There are 2 clinchers. Number 1, it was not using enough of Charles Dickens dialogue. Number 2, I love The Ghost of Christmas Past, and it is not a Victorian lady with a muff. Okay? It's not. And I could, as soon as she popped onto the scene, I was like, I have a lot of other Christmas carols I need to watch, and I don't think this one's going to make my list, so I'm just going to move on.
I'm going to peace out on this.
Yeah, peace out. Peace out, George C. So, yeah. Sorry.
He's too jovial even before the conversion. He's not like Scrooge should be. His expression is placid, is not mean. It's like Scrooge should be vile, I think.
Right. So did he not give himself enough room for an arc?
Right.
Basically,
I don't think so. He was just kind of milquetoast, even in delivering his lines and he laughed. Like he laughed after one of the, sort of terrible Scrooge lines in the beginning. And I was like, what? No. So
why is this on your good list? I'm so confused. You must have watched some really bad 5 ones.
I don't really have a good list. I just have like ranked the 5 that I watched this weekend. So
okay.
I did not do the assignment correctly. I was not the teacher's pet. Let's make that clear. Number 4 on the Enneagram, gonna do my own thing. All right. You guys know me.
I'm with you.
Can I say in partial defense of the George C. Scott version, I definitely get your criticism of Ghost of Christmas Past. That I think that will be a common refrain where it's easy to have a problem with the Ghost of Christmas Past because the description in the story is so vague. I happen to have it pulled up here. So here's the description when Scrooge first encounters the Ghost of Christmas Past. It was a strange figure, like a child, yet not so like a child as like an old man, viewed through some supernatural medium which gave him the appearance of having receded from the view and being diminished to a child's proportions. And then it goes on. It's like, oh, so it's like a child, but also like an old man, but only when viewed through a supernatural medium.
But never like a Victorian woman with a muff. Ever. I don't see that in there.
Maybe that was an attempt at like some feminism in there, Mandy. Come on.
They needed to have the ghosts can't all be dudes, right?
Because women have a part in telling miserly men what to do. I mean, that's just it should be accepted.
It's all going to come down to my favorite. And they did the best with the Christmas Past, is all I'm saying.
Oh, man. Okay, well, let's go in a circle then. Mandy, what is your third favorite?
Okay, my third favorite, you guys can giggle all you want to, is the Mickey Mouse Christmas Carol.
That's my third favorite, too.
Oh,
that's my third favorite.
It. Like,
Girl, it's like 15 minutes.
Okay, let me just erase the stinking George C. Scott and put the Mickey Mouse in for me because I have watched it. Do remember it. I just didn't watch it this weekend, and I should have turned off George C. Scott and watched Mickey.
Right? That's all right. We forgive you because the Christmas Carol is all about forgiveness. So how could we not? Anyway,
right?
Okay, so Mickey Mouse. I watched it because I was like, this will just be fun, and I bet it'll be cute. And I, of course, had watched it. It was from 1983. So I, of course, had watched it. But watching it again after having read the book, I was actually very surprised at how much of Charles Dickens' dialogue they used. So it was truer to the text than expected. Jiminy Cricket does not match necessarily the description, but I am all about Jiminy Cricket. That was great.
Well, he's like the Ghost of Christmas Past, right?
He was, yes.
Yeah, that seems like as good a choice as any, given that description I read. It was like a child, but also like an old man when you view him through a supernatural lens. What?
Perfect. The top hat, the wisdom, Yeah. But also, who can argue with Goofy as Marley? That is just perfection. And then the bulldog that I don't think has a name with the cigar is the Ghost of Christmas Future. I mean...
Oh, isn't that Pete?
Yeah, Pete. Dang, I should have known that since my husband's name is Pete. Shh, don't tell. Anyway.
It's a tenuous connection.
But also, I just really appreciated it because it's so true not only to the text, but also to Disney and the cartoon, the little pratfalls and everything. I was actually laughing out loud. Aww. It was enjoyable. And I also am all about introducing children to literature as soon as possible. And I also really respected the fact that and of course it's Scrooge McDuck, which this is why there is a Scrooge McDuck in the first place. But Scrooge McDuck, when they get to the future and there's the tombstones and stuff, I appreciated that they were very careful not to actually use the words dead or death or anything like that. And so I really felt like they were being careful to let parents decide how much they explained what all that meant. So it was enjoyable and it was truer to the text than I expected. And it's Mickey Mouse,
Yeah. Oddly enough, I think the Mickey, Disney characters can do a good job with the story because, again, the text does have a lighthearted quality. The narrator voice isn't all somber. There's sort of a jovial, the text starts with him doing this musing. Well, I don't know why a doornail has to be the deadest of all things, but Jacob Marley was dead as one, so you can see how in that scenario, like Scrooge McDuck could be an effective Scrooge. And I think it took some departures, obviously, but I thought some of its choices are actually kind of interesting. I thought that Jiminy Cricket was a really good choice for the Ghost of Christmas Past.
Yeah.
And I think that's, again, as good of a casting choice they could have made. The choice to make the Ghost of Christmas Present like a giant, that was weird, but I kind of liked it, and it was a lot of good humor there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it gets the story across. It's not long. Like, it's what, like half an hour?
If that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's a really great adaptation.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And because that was going to be my choice for number 3, we go back around to Evangeline, who, with her third choice, picked a movie she did not like. So let's see if she likes her second choice.
It makes me wonder what 4 and 5 were, but we'll talk about that for now.
4 and 5 are rather dreadful. We'll have to bring that up at the end if we have the time. Okay, number 2. Yeah, Mandy, I don't know. You might be mad at me on this because I had to put Muppets in number 2. I know.
I'm not mad
at you.
I
was. Okay. Are you sure?
No, I totally am not, because I struggled. I actually struggled.
Okay. I was fully prepared for Muppets to be number 1, and it almost was until I found the one that was my childhood one. So Muppets gets high ranks across the board. Michael Caine. I mean, come on.
Right.
Right. And so many good things about it. It's just so watchable. You know? Yeah.
So I think we should spend a lot of time on Muppets Christmas Carol, because I get the feeling that if we were to do a poll of America, and if we ask America, okay, you're not trying to impress anyone, you're not trying to look smart at a cocktail party or whatever, what's your favorite Christmas Carol? I bet this one wins Running Away, because it's a really good adaptation.
It really
a lot of it, sort of broadly, a lot of the stuff I just said about Disney applies even more so to the Muppets. I love the Muppets, but the Muppets, they are really good at having this attitude of whimsy, being kind of irreverent, but in almost an innocent way, which is a very hard line to walk, but the Muppets do a great. I think it's a good vehicle for them.
Yeah.
Oh, can I make one more point in partial defense of George C. Scott, just so I need to make sure I maintain peace within my household?
Important.
Okay. I can tell Danielle that I defended her. Okay. So one of the things you mentioned with the George C. Scott version was that Scrooge had a Gordon Gekko energy. And I think that is probably true, but I think it shows how strong of a character Scrooge is, where he is the sort of archetype who just seems to exist in the world. You know, again, it was written in 1843. Wall Street was 1987. Today, 30 years later, we still see that. And I love how the villain isn't someone who's obviously bad in the way that we think of it. You know, he's not like a murderer. He's not a thief and he just takes stuff. He doesn't do any of that stuff. His sins are greed and dishonest business dealing and oppressing the poor and all these things that you might not think of on the surface as sins, but that are still equally sinful.
Yeah, they're almost socially acceptable sins.
Exactly. But that sort of thing applies to Michael Caine's character in the Muppets too, just as much. So Mandy, the floor is yours. Tell us why you love this version so much.
Muppets?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So am I skip, because we all know it's my number 1. Are we blowing that?
That's okay. It's okay. We're having we'll have the talk now.
It's messy. It's almost a tie, actually, my number 2 and Muppets. But since we're talking about Muppets, the sets are gorgeous. I'm sorry for all of y'all who were not able to see it in the theater, because I can remember. And I mean, okay, I was a newlywed, stars in my eyes, everything was lovely. But I can remember sitting there and that opening sequence of the little snowy houses. Yes. And it's going, if you guys could just try to imagine that in the theater, it was gorgeous. And I remember, I think I might have gasped a little. I mean, I'm an emotional person anyway. We all know that. But I mean, I do. I think I went what? Me?
She's going to beat me.
But yeah, I remember going, because now I don't know if y'all know this, but this was the first Muppet movie made after Jim Henson died. So the pressure on Brian Henson, his son, was enormous. And I don't remember being skeptical of it at all. I was excited because, I mean, the Muppets are the Muppets, and Peter and I both grew up watching the Muppet Show. So we love the Muppet. So I don't remember worrying that it wasn't going to be good. We were excited because it had been a really, really long time because, I mean, the production value, it took them forever, but it more than paid off. But also, you asked at the beginning in your little opening, Matt, if Gonzo was the right casting choice for Charles Dickens. Yes, he's perfect. And then just the way that they balance the humor with Rizzo and Gonzo. And then they just make very wise choices. Like even the fact that Rizzo and Gonzo leave right when the Ghost of Christmas Future comes, because
yes, you're on your own.
You're on your own. There's no place for humor in that part. But then they come back and it's all great that they come back. But also Michael Caine is such a good Scrooge. He's so fantastic. And the Ghost of Christmas Past is as perfect, I think, as it could possibly be.
Yes.
Based on the ethereal description.
Totally agree with you. And peeking ahead a little for my category of best Ghost of Christmas Past, I was going to say Muppets because you can tell they gave it their darndest to match that impossible description. And I think they pretty much nailed it. I think they got it as close as you can. Yeah. Absolutely.
And the songs too. Every single song is just fantastic.
Yes. Okay, guys, I want to pitch a future podcast that's Muppets as art, wherein we watch like as many Muppet movies as we can, and we talk about how they are actually art, because humor is hard. And the artistic quality of, like you mentioned, the set, so they take your breath away. That is work. That is art. And then we also get to watch Treasure Island with Tim Curry. And, you know, right? Should we not do this? Is this not happening at a future date?
Okay, let's pencil it in. I would love an excuse to do a Muppets binge. That sounds fantastic.
Oh my gosh. Yes. The wonderful lives we do lead, you guys.
Right. I know. It's a fantasy world. But I just like, also when you think about the humans, it is amazing to me how just as Michael Caine is walking along singing with a bunch of puppets and patting the little tiny mice on the head when he's giving them presents. And it's Michael Caine, people. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Isn't he a knight? I don't know. He should be. If he's not. He should be.
Yeah. Well, if he isn't, he should be.
Did you know his real name is Maurice Micklewhite? And one of the stores they walk by at the end is Micklewhite's.
Oh, cool.
So watch for that if you ever want to watch any Christmas Carol movie again.
It's going to be a while, but okay.
In case you're wondering, I looked it up. He is Sir Michael Caine.
There you go.
We go. Okay, so briefly then, I think one of the things that I appreciate most about the Muppets Christmas Carol is I think their songs do a really good job of capturing the mood of the book. So, any particular songs that stand out to you?
Well, The Love Is Good.
Oh, that one. Oh, you're going for the sad lost love.
And actually, you know what? It's important that I said that because you guys should know that when they adapted it for TV and they made a DVD version from when they adapted it for TV, they cut that song. So people,
I wondered.
That's what happened.
I was watching it from back in the day, but I watched it on like Netflix and it wasn't there.
Yes. Yep. Oh my gosh.
So buyer beware. If you are buying a DVD, not that anyone does anymore, but I do. But if you're buying the DVD, just check. I don't know how to help you, but you'd have to Google and be like, which version cuts out The Love Is Gone? Because one of them cuts it out. Which is so ridiculous because Michael Caine standing behind her while she's singing that. Oh, crying. Hello.
I know. Yeah, it's such a good song.
You know which one, though, I think that really sticks with me, though, for the spirit of the whole movie overall, is when Kermit, the one that Kermit and Tiny Tim sing, when they're coming back. And it's one that they reprise in other parts of the movie.
After all, there's only one more sleep till
No,
Christmas.
that's the mice.
No.
That's the rats.
What is it?
That's the rats.
'Tis the season to be jolly and joy.
Yes. Oh, you're right. Da-da-da.
Ba-da-bum.
Yeah. Is it the same one? Oh, I guess it is.
I think they're different parts of the same, like, bigger, like,
That's
musical number.
I knew it was something that was a reprise, whatever.
Let's also, cards on the table, Kermit may be the best Bob Cratchit. He's an absolutely fantastic Bob Cratchit.
Yes, agreed.
And Miss Piggy is literally the best Bob Cratchit's wife, whatever name she has in...
No,
because I noticed she has different names, but yes, she rules.
She does. I like that they let her wear her purple gloves, even as...
Right, and the purple eyeshadow, and the girls have purple eyeshadow. Love it. And then when he, like, comes in, and the twin girls, like, run, like, to Kermit, and they like, knock him into the wall. I love it.
I know.
That's
it's
gold.
Perfect.
That's just comedy gold.
Now I want to go watch it again.
Yep.
Let's wrap this up.
I'm probably going to very soon. So, one closing thought, because there's a lot more I could say about Muppets. I also love Gonzo and Rizzo very, very strongly. But my favorite line in the entire movie, this is going to sound random. You may not even remember it. I think it's hilarious. Do you remember how Sam the Eagle plays the part of young Scrooge's like schoolmaster?
Yes.
And he's talking to Scrooge about how he's going to be a businessman. He's like, young Ebenezer, you are about to be a man of... And he like puffs out his chest. He's like, business. And I think that's the most hilarious thing in the world. The fact that I think that's inherently funny is probably why I became an English major. But anyway, so we have number 2 pick, which is also Mandy's number 1 pick. So Mandy, why don't you give us your number 2 pick and round that out?
Okay. So my number 2 pick, which I actually did go back and forth, but ultimately my decision was based on the fact that I could watch The Muppet Christmas Carol countless other times. And this other one I will definitely watch again, but maybe not as many times as Muppet. So number 2, very close to number 1. I was very surprised. The 1951 version, which I think the British version is called Scrooge and the American version is called The Christmas Carol, or vice versa. But anyway, the actor is Alastair Sim, and I had never heard of him. He's Scottish. My mom had heard of him, of course, because she's 83. So, and he was a stage actor. So basically, okay, so some doofus at some point colorized it. I would never, don't bother with the colorized version, because one of the best things about it is that it's black and white, and they did all the things that are unique to black and white movies. Like there's this one scene, the scene when Scrooge is coming home and he's walking up the stairs. Oh my goodness, the shadows of the banisters and all that stuff. Basically, it felt like a good old fashioned ghost, like almost a horror movie from like the 50s. So that was point 1 in its favor. Also, the special effects were so delightfully cheesy. Oh my gosh. They have like this hourglass like twirling, and I don't know, you'd have to see. But anyway, they had an old man for Christmas past, but that was kind of okay with me. He was in his little nightgown and all that. But one of the biggest things that they do that's different from other versions is they fleshed out his backstory like nobody else. The Christmas past stuff took, I would say, the majority of the movie was the Christmas past, to a point where I was, for a moment, I was like, this is kind of like It's a Wonderful Life, where you're really seeing, except not. It's a not wonderful life. It's the opposite of It's a Wonderful Life. But anyway, like they gave so much more backstory to how he became who he became. And you really see how they kind of follow his trajectory from the young boy to like all the disappointments, but also choices he made that led to the greed. And they just did a really good job of that. And Alastair Sims is just lovely. He was just lovely. I mean, kind of goofy, but I would say melodrama in all the best ways. And oh my gosh, the Marley guy, that man can wail like no one. He was really good at wailing. But there were parts where I was like, I'm actually scared. And then even at the end, his redemption is really humorous because he's acting like a complete nutcase. Like at one point, he has a housekeeper and she's like freaking out and screaming because he's being not like himself. And at one point, he's like, I need to stand on my head. And he like goes and he's going to stand on his head because he's so happy. And I mean, it was just awesome. And he like can't stop There's one part where he's like, what? He's talking to himself and he's like, why am I so happy? What do I have to be happy about? I don't know. I can't help it. And he giggles. I'm not making it sound as good as it was. Yeah, it was a very full experience of how Scrooge became. And so his redemption felt that much more invested in it because you knew him more than you do in the typical version. So I had to watch it on YouTube because it's nowhere.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I did a little bit of a scan of like what the critical view is of a lot of these, like seeing different lists. Some are just from like jaded nerds, but others seem to be from more legitimate sources. And that seems to be the version that's considered like the first definitive version, the 1951 one.
That's why I chose to watch it among all the others, because I was like, let's see why they like it.
Yeah. So if you want to get an idea like what the most important ones are along the way, that's definitely a can't miss one.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've heard very good things about the Scrooge guy. I should have had his name at hand before I said Alastair Sim.
Yes.
Okay. And remember, everyone, do not get the colorized version.
Now, here's a fun little tidbit. In real life, he was one of the nicest people. The guy that plays him as young Scrooge, Alastair Sim adopted that guy as a young boy and raised him. Yeah. So he was not a Scrooge in real life.
Interesting.
So, fun facts. Fun facts with Mandy.
All right. So now it's my turn.
Okay.
Just so everyone knows, we can pretty much round this out. So my third choice was Mickey's Christmas Carol. Second choice, Muppets Christmas Carol. Wow. Okay. Mickey and Muppets. But my first one, and the main reason I wanted this podcast so I can defend it in public, the 1970 musical version, Scrooge, starring Albert Finney.
Yeah.
That's my number
love
one
this movie.
Too. Yes.
No. All right.
It's my number one. We are right.
One of us.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm feeling Scroogey
now. So let's see. How should we do this then? We have 2 votes for, 1 against. Let's start with the dissent. Mandy, what problems do you have with it?
I mean, I grew up with it too. I was 5 years old when it came out, fellas. So I definitely remember it. There are just certain parts of it that I got the feeling where I wasn't sure if I was supposed to think it was funny or not. Those sort of awkward moments. Albert Finney, it is incredible to me that he was 34 when he played that. So that's amazing. I'm sorry, but I've always had a problem with them dancing on his coffin. That's a great.
I love that scene so much.
It's I know.
I love.
Thank you very much.
Now I understand.
Thank you very much.
No, I love the song. Yeah. That's a great song. It gets stuck in your head for days. But I think there was just that element of discomfort in certain parts of it that I don't know. I'm sorry.
Well, it's okay. We're about to prove you wrong, Mandy, but that's okay. And just for those unfamiliar, 1970, it's a musical. It's, like Mandy said, Scrooge played by Albert Finney, who was 34 at the time, but they gave really good makeup. Like, I didn't realize he was a young dude until years later. Like, it looks really good.
It does.
And has some really, really great toe tappers. And I love it to pieces. It's the version I grew up with, so I would watch it like every single year, and I just love it so much I can't even evaluate it fairly because it's such a basic part of me. But Evangeline, why do you love it?
Okay, well, first I got to say, Mandy, that Corey is in your corner. He hated it. when I asked him why, he said something vaguish like the 1970-ishness of it.
Oh, there you go.
It's extremely 1970s.
It is.
Yes. Yeah. So
and the milk of human kindness, like
Oh, I love the milk of human kindness.
No.
Okay, so listeners, for those of you who don't know, when he goes to the Ghost of Christmas Present, he's this big dude with a beard. He's wearing like a velvet nightgown, and he's showing a lot of chest hair. And he gives Scrooge this big goblet of wine, which is the milk of human kindness. And Scrooge gets drunk off the milk of human kindness, and it's great.
Immediately.
And he sings about how much he loves life.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that song. I know the music. The music is one of the biggest factors in why it's the best. But one of the reasons, and maybe this comes down to absolutely personal taste, but Tiny Tim is not cloying.
That's true. That's true.
I don't know how that child managed to pull it off because, and okay, I watched 5 versions. And so by the time we got to God Bless Us Everyone, I was like, can't that kid say anything else?
Shut up, kid.
Exactly. Like, I'm so tired of it. But the actor who plays Tiny Tim, he pulls it off. He, has just a lovely little voice, and it just was spot on, and that's hard. So that's one of the points.
He's really good in the 1951. Yeah. They give him more lines.
Is he? Okay. And he's I think, so sweet. Albert Finney is one of the biggest, other factors in why it's such a good.
He's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, and Alec Guinness.
Oh, yes. Oh, my gosh. Though Alec Guinness as Marley is something else. I don't even know.
Oh, that's right, boys and girls. If you're on the fence about whether you should watch this, Obi-Wan friggin' Kenobi is Jacob Marley. And do you know when I realized that? I realized it today, as this day that we're recording. I have been watching it forever, and I never figured it out, but he's so good. He's so weird, and his mannerisms are so off. His delivery's weird, and it's all very dissettling, which is, you can tell it's exactly what he's going for, and he nails it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So a couple points I wanted to make about this one that I think it does particularly well. I already mentioned great Marley, great Ghost of Christmas Present, great Scrooge. The way that they arrange the songs, I think best highlights the redemption narrative. So you talked about how it's Christ-haunted, Mandy, and I agree, and that's how it is, and I think all the good adaptations have that. But I would say, humbly, knowing that I am extremely biased, this version does as good a job of any of them because of the way it inverts all of its songs. So step back. Throughout the course of the film, they have this series of songs that are meant to highlight how awful of a dude Scrooge is. So one of the first songs is when Scrooge is walking home from his counting house back to his home. He's walking through the streets of London. Everyone hates him. And this group of boys, these group of street urchin, teenage punks, they're following him around. It's giving him craps hey, look, it's Father Christmas. And they have this song, Father Christmas, Father Christmas. He's the meanest man in the old wide world.
In the old wide world, he knows it.
Yeah, just like these cockney punks giving him crap. And so then there's this other song where, you hinted at, Mandy, the Ghost of Christmas Future takes him to where he's died. He doesn't know that he has died, but he sees all these people who owe him money. He's like, that's Tom Jenkins. He seems unusually happy for a man so deeply in debt. And they're all just cheering. And he doesn't realize that his coffin's being brought out. And all the people, this music number literally has them dancing on his coffin. And it's so macabre, but so good. Just because once it sinks into Scrooge, it's just a really powerful moment. And
that's true.
The very end, they take those songs, Father Christmas, Thank You Very Much, and they invert it. So now he dresses up as Santa Claus because at the very end, after his redemption, and those same street urchins singing it sincerely. Hey, it's Father Christmas, and they mean it. And he goes and genuinely cancels the debts of everyone who owes him money, and they're genuinely singing "Thank you very much." And it's just like the parable where the man who has his debts forgiven, all of his sins forgiven, immediately goes and cancels the debts of everyone else. It's such a beautiful portrayal that they do so well. And something along those lines too. So Fred, the nephew, and Fred's wife, Fred does, he says his lines. They're very similar to most of the other adaptations. But in the closing song, when they're doing all this other stuff, there's this really, really beautiful moment when Fred and his wife are wandering through. It's oh my gosh, Uncle Ebenezer, he's gone crazy. And then Uncle Ebenezer comes, it's like, hey, I'm just a silly old man. I regret all the Christmas I spent and just want to, he gives him a present. And instead of being all mawkish in it, Fred's wife just like, hey, dinner starts at 3. Can we expect you? And it was such a beautiful, just like, oh, that's forgiveness. Brought him back in, didn't need to make a big deal out of it. And that's him being forgiven and brought back to have dinner with his family. It was such a beautiful ending. I will say I have had a tradition for the past couple years on the 12th day of Christmas, so the very final day of Christmas, when the rest of the family is in bed, I will pull up that final music number on YouTube and watch it as my final goodbye to Christmas. So I think it's such a beautiful redemption story.
Yeah.
So we can talk about the silliness of it too, but I think they've nailed
Oh my gosh, the hell scene. You guys cannot defend.
I will not defend the hell scene.
It scared me though. Oh my gosh. Like I remember as a child that being so scary.
Yeah.
And so watching it again, like, you know, once we started it and I realized that this was the version, I told Corey, like, okay, I was so scared at the end. And then, you know, it comes where he looks back from the grave and the, you know, the Ghost of Christmas Future, you know, you see the skeleton and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not
nightmares.
Scary. That's stupid.
Yeah.
That's stupid.
Yep.
I was so scared as a child.
So just to sort of tie a bow on this for everyone, Ghost of Christmas Future, standard scene. He goes to see his own grave. It's open because they're just about to put his coffin in. Ghost of Christmas Future turns out to be like a $30 Halloween skeleton that you buy at the store. And he falls into his grave. And then in a scene that makes no sense, I'll admit it, I love this movie to pieces. This makes no sense. He goes to hell, and it's kind of played for comedy. Like Jacob Marley is there, and he's kind of being kind of cheeky about it. And he's showing his quarters, and like demons who are like shirtless guys come and like wrap him in a chain. And that's like the very last scene before he wakes up, and then he's like, hey, I'm back. And that's the redemption. So I am absolutely not defending that scene. But let's say something else that's good. That movie has a fantastic Fezziwig. I love the Fezziwig character. And that one has a fantastic one. One of my old man goals is to one day be a Fezziwig. Dance moves and tights and all. So get ready for that.
We'll hold you to it.
Okay. So we've done our lists. So now we can do some sort of honorable mentions, some movies that we think are just odd, noteworthy. We wanted to mention some shout outs if you wanted to, you know, talk about someone who's a good, like Ghost of Christmas Future who we haven't discussed. So Mandy.
Yeah.
Closing honorable mentions for you.
I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to me that the Ghosts of Christmas Future are almost always the same. So I guess I would give Pete the Bulldog a little honorable mention for him and his cigar for, you know, whatever. But I really do recommend the 1951 one. There's no way I would have watched it had we not been doing this podcast. So I'm really glad that I did, especially when you mentioned the forgiveness. The way it ends, it's a little bit of a different sequence in the way that he goes and makes his amends with people. He doesn't do the jaunt through town that is like all the others, which I do love that. So I'm not saying that this is better, but it's just different. But when he goes to Fred's house, the scene between Scrooge and Fred's wife, I actually cried, like for the same reason that you like the one in the Albert Finney movie. It was just truly genuine forgiveness. And yeah, so I highly recommend that one. Everyone has YouTube.
That's the nice thing about the really old movies.
Yeah, but the best Christmas Past, hands down, is Muppet.
I think so.
Yeah.
She wins that running away. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. That's all I got.
Okay. Evangeline, what honorable mentions would you give?
I didn't love this movie, but the Ghost of Christmas Present in the Scrooged movie with Bill Murray, the Ghost of Christmas Present in a, you know, wild departure from the script is played by Carol Kane in like a fairy costume with like wings and everything. And she manages to just beat up Bill Murray at every chance that she gets. And the movie is like a little too long and a little too wordy, but Carol Kane beating Bill Murray as Scrooge works. Like that, just like comedy works. And it's different and it's wacky and I loved it. So
that's great.
That's
all
my
right,
shout
couple
out.
bonus thoughts for me. I think it's interesting if you're looking at Signs of the Times. I have not seen this adaptation, but I've read a fair amount about it. The latest FX one, I think it was from last year, where Guy Pearce is Scrooge. And I think it's an interesting sign of the times where, first of all, it's very dark. Like they do a lot of like darkness in Scrooge's past. Scrooge is he's like a sexual predator in the beginning.
Ew. What?
Yeah. So that's when I decided I'm not watching this.
No.
Good
But
choice.
also at the end, Scrooge doesn't really get redemption, which is definitely a sign of our times. That's our culture is very like that sometimes. It's like, no, you don't deserve forgiveness.
He's canceled.
Like, yeah, exactly.
Down.
That's essentially what happens. So I'm not recommending it, but I'm merely noting it as a sign of the times.
Yeah.
And now, on a brighter note, I think Jim Carrey at least needs a shout out. His version, the Robert Zemeckis version, I'm not sure if it's good.
No,
I watched it.
Jim Carrey gives it his darndest, but the thing that kills it, there are probably many things that kill it. Robert Zemeckis in the Uncanny Valley.
Yes,
Same
exactly.
thing that drives me.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Evangeline, would you like to talk about the? Do you like to talk about the Uncanny Valley? Because that and Polar Express is like, I can't take it anymore, dude. Just stop.
Okay, you can probably, like, I know what the Uncanny Valley is. You can probably word it better. But the weird thing is, I love the word uncanny. Like, I love it.
Yeah, it's a great word.
But in the term that they're, in the way that they're using it, it's a creepy, almost human, but not quite human enough. And so it's off-putting. It's unsettling. But you talk about that term because, it's weird. It's so weird. And Matt's right. Like, Jim Carrey really does, like, bring it. But, yeah, Matt, talk about that term, the Uncanny Valley.
So the Uncanny Valley, it refers to something that is almost human, but not quite. Right. So, a cartoon of a human, you can tell it's not really a human, so it doesn't bother you. A video of a human, that is a human. But the closer you get to human, the creepier it gets until you get to fully human. So that last little jump you need to make, the Uncanny Valley, that is like, so again, like the animation they used in Polar Express, it almost looks real, but not quite. And that not quite creepy is all get out.
Yeah.
And that's what kills the Jim Carrey version too.
Okay.
Yeah. I have lots of thoughts on Polar Express, partly because my almost 5-year-old and 3-year-old love it to pieces, and we're reading it like every day now. But
my 22-year-old loves it to pieces, but that's okay.
But the book, not the movie, right?
My boys love the book and the movie.
No, my 22-year-old loves the movie. It's okay. I tried. It's out of my hands.
Our nightly struggle is getting my almost 5-year-old to pick any other book to read at bedtime. Any other book. It's an uphill battle. But all right. So there we go. We have gone quite a bit over time talking about A Christmas Carol because, I mean, come on, it's great. So if you're out there, read the book. It's not going to take you that long. It's a novella, so you can read it in an afternoon.
It's worth it.
And also, Muppet seems to be the one that has the most general acclaim. Don't listen to Mandy. Watch the 1970s Scrooge version.
Oh,
you'll be singing "Thank You Very Much" afterwards. They should
watch it so they can go, "Gosh, Mandy is so wise." Oh, and then watch the 1951 one. It was beautiful. You go. It really was.
There you go. All right. So thank you again, Charles Dickens. And as you can all tell, things are winding down at the Anselm Digital Pub. The fire is down to embers. The customers are trundling home. You've polished off your final glass. Once again, Believe to See is a podcast of Anselm Society. Thank you all for joining us at Believe to See, and God bless us, everyone.